This one storytelling framework has shaped Star Wars, The Wizard of Oz, and a million other stories. And one thing it also has done is change the way I write. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the 10 key insights that I got from reading The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. This is a heavy piece of writing and something that I think that each and every single writer should read at some point in their journey, because it's just so packed of information and storytelling devices that yeah, I learned so much from it. And also it helped me better understand storytelling in general, and like why that's a reason why we as humans love stories. So in this video, I'm going to go through the 10 key insights that I have from this book, and stick around to the end because insight number 8 helped me make sure that my fantasy novel Library of Eternity didn't fall flat. It was such a pivotal moment when I realized the mistake I almost made. So the writer's journey is actually like inspired by Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And this one is a bit harder to go through, a bit more academic, but probably also, no, but definitely also worth a read. But it's good to know that those two go hand in hand. And I don't know if you've seen the inside of this, but the table of content is like so thick. It's so much to read, so much to go through. So it's definitely worth taking its time. So the first lesson that I learned was the fact that story structure is less about structure and more about transformation. Vogler talks a lot about the fact that the outer journey reflects the inner journey. And it is sort of a map of inner change. So everything external that happens, what is really going on is that it is reshaping the hero of the story that you're writing. And this is very important because I think that I think that character-driven stories are the best stories. And a clear example of this is Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. He starts out as a simple farm boy with no experience. He's basically a nobody, but each event in this story pushes him towards becoming a better version of himself. It pushes him to become smarter, faster, stronger. And this is what a story is supposed to do. It's supposed to show us that with everything that happens can make us become someone better. It will help us improve along the way. And I mean, as humans, this is exactly what we want to hear, because things will happen in life. And this is a way for us to understand that it will help us to become someone new and become better versions of ourselves. And it's fine the fact that the plot can be really exciting. That is great. But Vogler just emphasized that the real point of the structure and why it works is because Luke is transformed by it. He makes a similar point about Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. The story starts out with, discomfort, disorientation, and becomes a story about her finding her home, her sense of belonging, and self-knowledge. So the hero will go from starting at one point to ending up at a completely different point, transformed by what has happened in the story. Lesson number 2 is the fact that the hero's journey is not formulaic. You don't have to follow it step by step. It is actually quite flexible, but it is a framework that you can use to improve your story. And there are, in the edition that I have, there are really great drawings and stuff. And in Act 1, we will start with limited awareness. The character just isn't aware about a lot of things and has to get increased awareness, and will be very reluctant to change, which he or she will have to overcome. And somewhere here they will be pushed out from the safe haven of their life, and something will happen that will force them to actually join the adventure. And this is also when they usually come into the So there's the ordinary world and there's the special world. And during Act 2, they will probably be in the special world, if I remember correctly. But as you can see, like, there are a lot of steps here, but that can be very adaptable depending on what kind of story you're writing. For example, in The Wizard of Oz, the stages are very visible. First, we have the ordinary world, then we have the call to adventure, the crossing into the special world. We meet allies, trials, ordeals, rewards, and then she returns. But in detective stories or thrillers, like, these steps can be much more subtle, so it doesn't have to be so obvious. But usually in fantasy and stuff like that, it will be really obvious that we travel to another special world, but it doesn't have to be like that in your story if you're not writing those genres. And Vogler makes a big point about us as writers having to understand the steps rather than just following them as key points, which I think is great, because I don't think that we should, like, I know that there are some stories that are like, at the 25% of your story, this should happen. At page XYZ, this should happen. Like, it shouldn't be like that. But you still need to understand the basic story structure for the story to feel natural and the suspense to be good enough for readers to stick around. And lesson number 3 is the fact that characters work best if they are somewhat archetypical. In the writer's journey, I think I can show it here. But Vogler basically has, like, all of book 1 is, a lot of it is like different roles that characters can play. And some of the roles are the hero, of course. And an example of the hero would be Luke in Star Wars, of course. We have the mentor, which is usually some sort of mentor figure who will help them, become stronger, become better, become wiser. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the mentor for Luke. And in Star Wars, Han Solo is some sort of trickster or whatever. And Darth Vader is the shadow figure that looms in the background, which we know you will have to confront at some point. But once again, like, you don't have to have super clear, it doesn't have to be like the shadow figure doesn't always have to be evil. For example, you can play around with these sort of archetypes. They are really good because they will help you as a writer and the reader to understand what kind of role that character has in the story. And Vogler's teaching here is especially practical because it will help us as writers to understand the dramatic impact of that character, why they are in this story. And like, an example of this is, of course, the mentor. The mentor is not just there to give the main character great advice, it's also there to prepare them for the change that they have to go through in able to complete the quest, to complete the story. And I think that that is a key thing that some writers tend to miss, because they're just so focused on the main character that they forget about the other characters and why they're in the story. I am currently editing a romantic feel-good manuscript, and in that manuscript, my editor came back to me and said, you have 3 people who has the role of the mentor here, and I think that's too much for this story. So you need to choose 1, maybe 2 of them can stay, but the other one has to have another role, because otherwise, it would be defeat the purpose of that role in the story. And that's great advice, because she was completely right. So I had to rewrite some of the outer characters and make sure that each and every one of them was there for the right purpose. This is perfect for you when you're editing, when you're going through and looking through your manuscript, because I do think that we tend to, when we just sit down and write, like, everything flows and we write in characters here and there. But for the reader, it can get very confusing to remember a gazillion character names, and especially if they have similar roles to each other. So bring that with you, because it will help save you a lot of headache in the editing rounds. So the core learning here is that strong characters often become clearer when you ask what archetypical energy they carry in the story. Lesson number 4 goes hand in hand with this. And this is the fact that the archetypes aren't just like, you don't have to fit the different archetype roles into a specific box. They don't have to have all the criterias. Archetypes are a lot more flexible, and a character can be a specific archetype at a specific point in the story. It doesn't have to stay in that archetype the entire story either. It can evolve, it can shift, it can be reshaped. So, and you can also like blend two archetypes together or whatever like is necessary for your story to become as good as it can be. And an example of this could be Han Solo in Star Wars. You know, he is a very complex character. At some point, he's a trickster. Some points, he's an ally. And, you know, at points, he's a skeptic and doesn't believe in things that Luke wants to achieve. And this is what characters can do. Like humans, if they shift, you know, they become a lot more dynamic, which will make the story a lot more intriguing and interesting, because that also makes sure that we as readers aren't sure, like, will this person, when shit hits the fan and, you know, when it really, really matters for our main character, will the other character be an ally or not? Just that the suspense of not knowing where their loyalties lie, that can actually make the story more interesting and more intriguing. Learning number 5 is the fact that the special world should be in some meaningful way different from the ordinary. And the contrast is important because that will like make the story a lot better. And the hero's journey gains a lot of energy from the special world, and that has its own rules, values, dangers, and atmosphere. In The Wizard of Oz, Kansas and Oz are dramatically different in image, tone, and possibility, and that contrast will help us as an audience to feel the crossing. And in Star Wars, when we move from being on this little farm into a war in the galaxy, that's real, like the contrast between those two are really big. So that is also a great example of like where the hero comes from and where they're going. And it's not only the contrast in the way the world looks, it's also the contrast in the way it feels and is perceived. The farm is safe and nice, but the galaxy is dangerous. It's just big. It's threatening. Like he doesn't know what's going to happen. Remember that the adventure becomes vivid when the new world tests the hero, and if it has new rules. Lesson number 6 is the fact that tests, allies, things that happens in the story, they're not just there to fill in the gaps between the beginning and the end. They're there to make sure that the character grows. They're there to like mold, because we need a journey for things to happen, because someone can't go from being weak to becoming strong overnight. They need to go and work out and like do the work, and this is the plot that's happening. And many writers in the middle of the story will place like some sort of scene or just write things happen. You shouldn't do this. You should think about making sure that every event and every scene matters. It can either push the character forward or it can be a setback. That is fine too, but make sure that it matters. Each scene, each ally, everything is placed there for a reason, either to help the hero move closer to the goal or further away from it. And if you find yourself like having some sort of saggy middle or stuff like that, look at your favorite stories and see how and why, like try to figure out why the writer chose those events that led up to that climax. What was it that what does your character have to learn in able to achieve their goal and in able to become the person they're supposed to be becoming? Think about that and try to place those kinds of events and allies and tricksters in your story. Lesson number 7 is the fact that the ordeal is sort of life or death situation. And in Vogler's theory, this is some sort of time when the hero will actually die, either for real or in like a metaphorical way. And this is usually when the hero will meet their biggest fear, their biggest ordeal, and they will come out as another character, another person at the end of that ordeal and battle. So it's a critical moment for the transformation of the story. In Star Wars, for example, this really, really works because it's not just a physical battle. It's a test of identity and trust and everything else. So there's so much depending on that moment that it's makes it like worth it. And for you to make this as good as possible, try to make sure that whatever happens, make sure that the character can never be the same again. They will come out as a different person on the other side of that ordeal. Lesson number 8 is the fact that reward isn't just a prize. It's about the hero earning meaning. And what does this mean? After surviving the ordeal, the hero usually gains some sort of object, insight, reconciliation, power, clarity, whatever it is. It has to have whatever it is, it has to have some sort of meaning for the character. So in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's gains are tied to understanding, not escapism. And in Star Wars, the victory matters because it confirms growth, loyalty, and the fact that Luke has earned his identity. This is a helpful craft lesson because a reward is stronger when it completes an emotional or thematic movement, not just a plot transition. The best rewards usually carry some sort of symbolic weight. Lesson number 9 is the fact that the return matters because stories are usually about bringing something back. So Vogler insists that the hero's journey isn't complete until the hero comes back with the elixir that they were sent out to find. So the hero needs to come back with some sort of thing that can heal whatever has happened to the village that they're from, or some sort of experience that can benefit the ordinary world. And Dorothy's return to Kansas is a classic example of this. The point isn't just that she gets home, but what she experienced, the fact that she experiences it as a home. She comes back changed in how she understands home. Luke's journey also matters because it brings back not only his survival, but he returns with a deeper courage and a larger place in the world. So this is one of Vogler's most important lessons for writers. The end will feel thin if the hero wins, but doesn't bring back something that matters. And lesson number 10 is the fact that this mythical story structure works because it has to do with human psychology. Underneath this guidance, Vogler's deep argument is that the patterns endures because they reflect truths that people recognizes. That is why Star Wars feels larger than just a space adventure. That's why the Wizard of Oz feels deeper than a fantasy quest. The shape resonates because it echoes fear, longing, growth, loss, courage, and return. And Vogler isn't telling writers just to copy the myths, but he is showing that certain patterns keep repeating because they organize human experience in a meaningful way. So try to make sure that your story does this too, reflect some sort of inner truth and inner journey. So I hope that this gave you some insights into how you can write better stories. If you want me to go deeper into more books on writing, or if you want me to continue deep diving into Christopher Vogler's The Writer's Journey, let me know in the comments. I love talking about story structures and books because it makes me a better writer. So I will talk to you soon. Bye.